Hi there, welcome to another deltaDNA webinar. This time we're going to be looking at some of the new features that came out in the release 28 that came out last Tuesday, the beginning of August, and particularly focusing on our new event triggered campaign system that I think we're pretty excited about. There's some great new features in there, so I want to let you take a look at it and show you how it works and answer any questions that come up. So the first thing you'll notice in the deltaDNA platform these days is inside the Engage campaign menu. We've still got your in-game and out-of-game campaigns, but this has changed a little bit. You've now got this entirely new event-triggered campaigns section, and the old campaigns have been renamed decision point campaigns. It's important to note that these decision point campaigns, the existing campaign system still exists and will continue to. There's no plans to phase that out in any way. So any campaigns you've got set up at the moment will continue to run, but we have these new event trigger campaigns as well that are slightly different. There's some benefits, some new features, and that's what I'll be taking you through today. Worth also pointing out the actions, the pieces of content that you build to use in your campaigns, they still remain the same. They have their own special place in the menu, so you can drill into the actions and see how to build them, create your own ones, and they remain the same. Worth also pointing out the event triggered campaigns only use game parameter actions or image message actions. So they're the only two that you can trigger with event trigger campaigns. But essentially what you're going to do is you're going to build your actions, your content, independently from the actual campaign logic and delivery, just the same as you would, and you can use the same actions on decision point or event trigger campaigns. One of the big differences with the event trigger campaigns, the thing that's pretty cool about them is with the decision point campaigns, they would strike when the player reached a point in the game, and the game would make a request up to deltaDNA servers, check for the latest state of the player, the latest state of all the campaigns and campaign logic, make a decision and send the content back to the device. The system's optimized to make that really, really quick, but there are times when the player may be offline or other reasons why sometimes you want to do things other ways. So that's what the event trigger campaigns are all about. The big difference with them is they are executed entirely on the game client by the SDK. At the start of each game session, the SDK reaches out to deltaDNA and grabs all the content and campaigns that that particular player may be eligible for in that session. And it holds all that on the device and it caches it. So when the player meets certain conditions, the campaign can trigger instantaneously and can therefore trigger even if the player has gone offline during the session. So let's, without further ado, let's actually take a look at a couple of campaigns and see what they look like. First of all, before we dig straight into it, I'll show you a couple of actions we've got set up for a particular campaign. So when you see the campaign built and running, it'll make sense. And I'm going to do this rather than doing it on the demo game. I've actually got another environment set up here with an example in it. So let's just go to Engage, Actions, and this game has got two particular actions that I'd like you to take a look at. This one is a power-up action, and it's using a simple game parameter response that defines an item type, amount, and name. So we're going to send a power-up called Bomb, and it's just going to send one of them back to the game. And the other action we're going to use is this Facebook like button. It's an image message action, and it looks like this. It's got just a single graphic we've uploaded. We've positioned it, given it a little bit of margin at the side, and we've said there's a URL that this is going to link to. We've also popped some parameters on that. So we're going to gift the player 100 gold coins if they decide to like us on Facebook by clicking this button. So that's the two actions we're going to use in our campaigns. Let's go into the Event Trigger Campaigns page. And you see I've got 2 set up here already. So let me just step you through how we built them. The building process for these actually is relatively similar to what you'll have already seen in the decision point campaigns, but rather than having everything laid out on a great big long page, we've set them up in a kind of multi-page, more like a wizard, just to let you step through them. The actual listing page is very similar to decision point campaign one. So you have pause, view, edit, duplicate, quick edit, and delete buttons for each campaign. Your campaigns can be sorted by priority. They can be, you can search. If you've got a long list here, you can search for it. There's also this pop-out sidebar with qualities in it, so you can filter. There's not enough campaigns here to actually use these filters terribly meaningfully, but you can filter for different combinations of things there if your campaign list is quite long. So rather than start one from scratch, what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to duplicate one of these so you can see how I built it up. So let's look at the first one, the game parameter one. Like I said, this is split into a wizard style kind of builder. So in the first page, we're just giving the campaign our basic details. Give it a name and a description, a start, an end date. We're just going to start this one immediately and run it until we tell it to stop. But we could have specified a specific starting time if this was a special event. Like the decision point campaigns, you do have a reset button on them as well. So you can say if the player takes part in this campaign and even if they convert, I might, after a cooldown period of say 14 days, decide to make them eligible for re-entry into the same campaign all over again. So you've got that same player reset capability. The next thing you do is actually choose what players you want to target. You can, with all of these, you can actually click on the breadcrumbs up here or just hit the next button as you're setting them up. In this particular example, we're just targeting everybody, saying everybody is eligible for this campaign, but we could choose a player segment just in exactly the same way that we would with the decision point campaign. We've also got some additional refinements in this. Because the SDK is reaching out at the start of every session and saying, tell me all about all the campaigns the player might be eligible for, at the same time, it's pushing some data up to deltaDNA, telling it a little bit about the device it's on. So there's some additional criteria you can use here, such as a platform, the locale, language, time since first session. So there's a few parameters in there you can use as well, just to kind of broadly segment the players at the outset. But for this case, we'll just leave this to everybody. The next thing you choose is the trigger. How are we going to trigger this campaign? And this is one of the big differences with event trigger campaigns. Rather than having to instrument special decision points in the game, these are just triggered by the events that you're collecting anyway. So you will already have instrumented your game to record events when the player does certain things, and indeed the SDKs, even there's a few events that they record automatically. So you can choose any of your events as triggers for these campaigns, and when the player triggers the event, it'll strike, the campaign will strike instantly. So in this case, we're using a mission started event. This campaign is really simple, so I'll just zoom through it. The next one I'll show you is actually got a bit more to it. The next page is the actions page. This is where we set up the content we want to deliver. So there's our power up bomb, and we're giving the same content to everybody. This isn't an A/B test, but I could have made it an A/B test just by clicking the plus button and building out more variants and giving different content to the players in each of those variants. But we'll just leave this as a single group. The other thing worth pointing out on this page that's quite good is we have a session execution limit. So this determines how many times within a game session the player's allowed to see this content. We have a page for setting up the conversion event. There isn't a conversion event set on this one, but again, you just choose what event you would like to use as a conversion event and any criteria, additional criteria on that event. So let's say we use mission completed, and there's all the parameters on a mission completed event. So you might say, let's say this player converts if they record a mission completed event and the mission name is equal to whatever we decide.
So that's a conversion event. Let me just zero that. Final page is the confirmation page, and let me just fix that. Player progress 14. Let's do that. That's more like it. So we've got our confirmation page here telling us all the details of the campaign we just set up. I can then go ahead and I've got it saved, so I could come out and just leave it in the list, or I can start it right now. But there's the copy of that campaign set up and ready to go. The other campaign we've got sitting in here that is a little bit different. The only thing that's different in it, I've gone to the trouble of actually setting up some more sophisticated trigger conditions. And the way you do that, let me just clone this one. If I go through to the trigger page, you'll see I've chosen my mission completed event as a trigger. And this time I'm saying, well, this isn't going to happen in every mission completed event, only if the mission name is equal to first time user forest and the number of moves a player has remaining is greater than 5 and less than 10. You can add other blocks of logic in as well. So let's say if I said the mission name was equal to something different, and let's do that. I could give a different mission name in there and then say the lives balance is greater than 2. So you can put different blocks of conditions ORed together. So it'd probably be appropriate around about now to show you campaign in action. So here's campaign in Unity. We've got it wired up, and what's going to happen the minute I hit the start button, the SDK is going to fire up, reach out to deltaDNA and download the logic for all campaigns, and then we can actually test them and see what happens. So you see here we've started the SDK, it's revealed our user ID, session ID, it's recorded some standard events, game started and client device, it's requesting its session configuration, starting to upload, and it's now downloaded the image assets, cached them, and it's got its session all configured. All that would have happened within milliseconds. So now when I run, if I hit either of these buttons, it's going to trigger a mission started and the correct mission completed event, and we'll get a campaign response instantly. So you saw that as we hit mission started, it's come back and said, we've received game parameters, item amount 1, type power up, name bomb, and the completed one. There's our Facebook like button. I could click on it and it's going to whisk me off to Facebook. And if I go back to Unity, you'll see that mission completed. It's telling us we've gone off to Facebook, and it's given us our gold currency, 100 coins. So that's how it actually looks in situ. The other thing, a couple of other things to point out about the deltaDNA SDK. We have updated all the SDKs specifically for the new event trigger campaigns, and the code has changed a little bit. So the way you actually instrument these now, this is the code behind that demo that we just saw. It's super simple. There's hardly anything to it. But essentially, what happens now when we're clicking these buttons, we would have recorded an event. So in the old days, it would have looked like we create an event and we then hit a record method. These days, what's different is we now have a couple of little callbacks on that method that basically say, if you get any game parameters back, here's what you'd like to do with them. And if you get an image message back, here's what you want to do with it. So you're just defining what happens if you get content back from when you record an event. And then you can have your image and game parameter handlers sitting off elsewhere. So there's our image message handler that basically says, if you dismiss it, do this. If you click it, do something different. And there's our game parameter handler that's just telling us we received the parameters. So that's how the event triggered campaigns hold together. What you'll also see when you start playing with them is In fact, you may even notice this before you start playing with them. There is a new event that we've added to every game in the platform. So when you look in your Manage Events page, you'll see that there is now this new deltaDNA event triggered action. This is simply an event that the SDKs will record automatically every time a player triggers one of these new event trigger campaigns. So you've got visibility and reporting on who's seeing each of the campaigns, and then also you've got your existing image message actions, which are recorded by the SDKs if the player is touching any of those image message actions. So you get full reporting of who's been targeted and what they did when they saw an image message. Other stuff to point out to you, yes, within the campaign itself there is some reporting. So if I go back into my event trigger campaigns and we'll look at my Facebook like one. Down at the bottom here we've got the same campaign impact page that you'll see on decision point campaigns, so I can tell it which event I would like to compare against. So let's look for that. Actually, we'll look for the image message action and we'll say when the action value, that was the right one. That's the right one. The action value is equal to that Facebook page. So just copy and paste that in and get the results. So this comes back now and is telling me each day of my campaign, how many participants we had, how many of them clicked on that Facebook like button and went off to Facebook, and giving me a percentage. So I can then build out a visualization of that and pop it onto a custom dashboard. So we've got nice simple targeting with using existing events. The campaigns are all cached, and we've got a simpler UI for building them and reporting. Other things that you'll notice, there are some new buttons down in the setup section. So there is a way of tracing through this. So I mentioned that at the start of every session we are doing this config thing. The SDK is reaching out and downloading a configuration to the device. We can take a look at that and see what configuration has been loaded onto each device. So first of all, let's use the event browser to find my user ID. So let's just look in valid events. Because I'm the only one playing this game, it's really easy to find me. So that's my user ID there. We also did have this down in the debug window from our console as well, though. So let's use that user ID to find out what configuration was downloaded to my device. So if I go into Config Trace Tool and just pop my user ID in there, it's going to come back, and you'll see everything that's getting sent back down to the device. So we've got a couple of images have been cached, sent 2 images back down to the device. There are some decision points wired up on this particular game. These are actually decision points I'm using for rewarded ads, but there's not rewarded ads in this particular demo. But you can see it's telling us all about the campaigns that were sent back. So there's the campaign data that was sent back from a Facebook like campaign, and down below it will be oh, there it is there. Mission 1, the power up one. So there's the power up, the game parameters one there. And it's showing us the JSON for the image message as well. And right at the bottom, there's actually the full raw details of everything that was sent back in the configuration. You might have noticed at the top of the page here, the sharp-eyed amongst you, there's also another new feature in this release, event whitelisting. So you probably are aware that inside the Event Manager tool, you've always actually had the availability to activate or deactivate individual events. And there's this little active button here. So you can turn individual events on and off. Historically, what that has done is it's not stopped the SDKs from sending the event data, but it puts a block on it within deltaDNA. So it will get to the event processing stage and say, oh, that event's no longer active. We don't need to send it all the way through into the events table and your reporting. What we've done with this release, because we're passing all this configuration stuff around at the start of a session, when you hit this button now, the new SDKs are actually smart enough. They're getting a list back telling them which events they're allowed to send. So if you deactivate an event, it'll take it out of this list, and the SDK essentially will stop sending it. So even if your game is busy trying to record this event, the SDK is going to be smart enough to know, no, we don't need that event anymore. Don't send it. So that's another nice change. There is some documentation to support all this, thank goodness. So if you go onto the documentation portal, inside the reference manual engage section under campaigns, where you used to have documentation about in-game campaigns and out-of-game ones, you've now got event trigger campaign documentation. And this is really just taking you through the UI that I've just kind of walked through in the last 10 minutes. So this will take you step by step through setting up a campaign and conversions and ultimately reporting as well. So pretty much just covering what I've gone through in this video. There is also a separate page that is more for developers to look at. That's more about how you structure the code, how it works. So down inside getting started, tutorials, event trigger campaigns is, in fact, I think it's pretty much the same code as I had on screen a minute or two ago. So there's all the code samples, and this code is also up on our, I'm pretty sure the full project is up on our GitHub site as well. So if you go to github.com deltaDNA and search for tutorials, it's going to be in there. I'm not seeing it. By the time you get this video on the docs site, it will be there. We'll get that published later today. Other new things, there have been a few other new features on the release 28. Other things to look out for, we've added a new type of chart into data mining. So if we go to, in fact, let's go to a custom dashboard and see one in action. If I go to this one, we've got a new chart type, new scatter chart. And there's an example of one down there. If we open this up, I'll show you how it's built. So we've got a query here that's simply returning 3 columns of numbers. So we can build a scatter visualization out of that. The way we set it up, we're just saying what the X, the Y, and the bubbles, which values from the data they equate to, and then we can label up our axis as well. There's a scatter chart type. One of the other things we've done with this release on matrix chart types, we've upgraded some of the sorting options a bit. We're giving you a little bit more flexibility in that. Other things, there's been quite a lot of bug fixes and just kind of quality of life changes around the site. Just to kind of little things that you'll spot just as you're working through it. So just a few other bug fixes around about the place. But the big one, the big thing for this release was these event trigger campaigns. And we think they're going to be a lot easier to set up and work with. I think they're going to be really cool. So thank you very much for taking the time to watch. This video will be published up onto our documentation portal, and it will be on our YouTube channel as well. We should get that up later today or tomorrow, and the GitHub page to support the tutorial that you've just seen, that will get uploaded as well. So thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye now.